Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Heather King. I'm the Managing Director for the Shared Services and Outsourcing Network in the Americas. You 100% did not join to see me today, so don't worry, I will be making myself scarce in just a second. I just wanted to welcome everybody today and just let you know a few things as we have this webinar ready to go. Number one, we have two fantastic presenters here today, and they want to hear your questions. Our webinars are meant to be interactive and are meant to get you the information that you want. So there is a very wonderful and helpful Q&A box right at the bottom of your Zoom link or your Zoom room or whatever it is on your phone, whatever you're using at the moment. And as you have questions, please feel free to type them into that Q&A box. We're going to see those questions. We're going to make sure the panelists see those questions and they will answer it during the webinar. So don't wait until the end. Type in your questions as they come into your head and we will make sure that they get them so we can answer them for you. And that's literally all I wanted to make sure that you guys knew what to do before the webinar started. And so now, without further ado, I would love to introduce this fantastic webinar with our amazing partners, apexanalytix, getting rid of duplicates in your vendor master. And it is going to be with the wonderful Julie Becker, the Accounting Operations Senior Manager at PepsiCo, and Akhilesh Agarwal, the SVP of Global Business Partner Technology Solutions at apexanalytix. So Julie, Akhilesh, I hand the virtual stage over to you.
Well, thank you, Heather. Appreciate that introduction very much. I'm Julie Becker. As noted, I am a Senior Accounting Manager over accounts payable, supplier master data, and cash disbursements for PepsiCo. And I am using two monitors here. So if you see me looking away, it's me referencing my notes and such, but I've been with PepsiCo for about 8 years. I have a background in public audit and foundation management, and now systems and control oversight. So very, very happy to be here today, and thank you for joining. Agarwal?
Yeah, so this is Akhilesh Agarwal. I'm Senior Vice President at apexanalytix. I run the Apex portal operations as well as all of R&D and technology development at Apex. So really glad to be here on this call. And I would love to take you through the journey along with Julie on how PepsiCo used some of our solution to prevent duplicate payments as well as resolve the issue with duplicate vendors and so on. So really excited to be here.
Okay,
So,
I think, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so having said that, Julie, would you please take us through some of the introductions for PepsiCo? And then I'm going to jump in and talk about the Apex solutions.
Definitely. Okay, so of course, PepsiCo is one of the world's favorite and most recognizable brands. We are averaging more than 67 billion in revenue each year, and we have 23 brands that are billion-dollar brands. Operate in more than 200 countries with over 265,000 employees. Of course, some of our most recognizable brands include not only Pepsi-Cola, but also Quaker, Gatorade, Tropicana, and Frito-Lay. And we continue to build our brands. We're especially focused in recent years on building healthy snack alternatives and other innovative and exciting brands, such as Rockstar was one that we acquired last year, and Better For You Foods. So continuing to build our brands across the globe. And if you'll go to the next slide, I can tell you that we're proud not only of those brands and our image and long-standing reputation for providing quality snacks and beverages, but also we've been fortunate to be recognized by a number of organizations for various things, including being among the best places to work, among the world's most ethical companies, and best corporate citizens. And we're extremely proud of those things. PepsiCo really stands firm on maintaining high quality and excellence in all that we do and being good social partners in the communities where we operate. So we're really proud of those distinctions.
Thank you, Julie. Uh, uh, just a couple of minutes on Apex Analytics. So we offer a wide range of solutions specifically related to vendor management, accounts payable audit, and preventing overpayments and duplicate payments. So our Apex Recovery service does the commercial audit for Fortune 1000 companies of the world, and we find these duplicate payments, statement credits, and recover it on behalf of our customers. First Strike is the tool that we use internally to find those overpayments and duplicate payments and statement credits and so on. So this software is used internally by Apex, as well as it's available as a subscription for you to check these overpayments or duplicate payments yourself, and even prevent it from going out in the first place. So just a quick statistics on that: we prevent over $3 billion of overpayments annually across all of our clients. Apex Portal is our supplier information management and supplier risk management solution. We built it for the purposes of registering 100% of the suppliers all of the time. It also allows you to do dynamic discounting, supplier self-service, supplier risk management, as I stated earlier, and even do a statement audit through the Apex Portal. SmartVM is the world's largest database for golden records of suppliers. We can use it to enrich your vendor master with and append missing data to your vendor master, as well as cleanse it and validate the information that you already have. Uh, in addition to validating it one time, we can also monitor it on a continuous basis. So every time your data changes, it can go through SmartVM APIs, and we can enrich it, validate it to make sure your data is always in pristine condition. So those are some of the services that we offer. A couple of more data points is we communicate with 10 million plus suppliers on an annual basis, and we cover 98% languages which are used in the global trade. Can go to the next slide. Yeah. So over here, Julie, if you can just talk about how PepsiCo used SmartVM and what your numbers are.
Yeah, so you can imagine the size of data that we deal with at PepsiCo. It's enormous. We actually have 3 ERPs that we use just in North America, 2 instances of Oracle and 1 of SAP. Thankfully and mercifully, we are moving to a single instance of S4HANA globally, but that's a 5 to 6 year project, so we still have a few years to go in the current environment. So we handle in the North American Shared Services Accounts Payable organization over 38 billion in spend annually. We handle almost 9 million invoices annually, and we're onboarding 7,000 new suppliers on average each year. That averages out to be almost 30 vendors a day that we're adding to our systems. So lots and lots of activity and lots of opportunity for error. We certainly do have a lot of automation. A large portion of our invoices, for example, are generated systematically, and so we're not having to process paper invoices in those cases, but we do still have almost 1 million paper invoices that we're having to image, key in, and manually process. So still a lot of opportunity for error, and that is one reason that we have engaged with Apex on a number of fronts, including an audit recovery engagement and the SmartVM solution. And I'll be talking a little bit more about both of those things and how we're using them as we go. But one of the great things about leveraging Apex and their expertise and technology for the audits is that we're not having to spend so much time as it would take for us to be going through our data constantly, looking for opportunities process improvement opportunities or patterns that we need to address in how our invoices are being processed. And so, we're spending 3 to 4 hours a week just responding to the things that Apex is finding in their audit versus us actually having to be performing the audit and spending the time on those activities. So next slide. So we do a pretty good job. We have about 99.9% accuracy in our invoice processing. So really, we have very tight controls, excellent training, and so we're very, very good at invoice processing. But again, when you have a million paper invoices, that's still a lot of volume, and even less than 1% error can still create a good bit of inefficiency and waste and time spent that really doesn't need to be. And so that's why we really shoot for perfection, and Apex is helping us get there by the observations that they're able to share with us through their audit recovery service. And for instance, from the previous audit cycle to the most recent, we saw a 30% improvement in our accuracy. So we're able to act on the things that they bring to us and improve our processes and our statistics through them. A lot of the important aspect of the audit recovery is our suppliers. It's our relationship with our suppliers. It's their willingness to participate. And here again, we have great success. The response rate from our suppliers this past year was 96%. And that's great. I mean, that's even higher than we might have expected. But I think it speaks to, we have good relationships with our vendors. It's important to us to maintain those relationships. And Apex does a great job of partnering and serving as our agents and our representatives as they interact with suppliers during the audit. I think that the COVID situation has only underscored opportunities that existed prior to COVID. For instance, we still have a relatively high paper environment. We've made big improvements over that in the past years, but still there's opportunity. And so COVID has forced us to even take a look at those paper processes that remain. And so that's something else that we've been focused on and trying to take advantage of that situation to continue to improve. We're constantly looking to improve our processes and our environment. And so that is something that's been a key focus for us this past year and will continue to be as we go forward. Next slide.
Thanks for that, Julie. And I want to take a couple of minutes and talk about something called a deployment spike. So what this means is whenever we are implementing a new system, there is a comparable change being made, and it results in a big deviation compared to what the standard process is. So when Julie talked about use of electronic invoices and moving from paper to electronic, that's one great example of a deployment spike, right? So moving from paperless to e-invoicing is definitely worthwhile, saves a lot of paper, resources, time, and especially helps solve the tampering of check problem. And check tampering is still the number one payment method which is used for frauds. So one thing I want to point out is when we move from paper to electronic, or whenever you deploy a new system, with the automation that comes, there's always an issue with compounding problems quickly if there is a possible defect in the process, right? Either a defect in the solution or defect in the process, and that problem gets compounded, and very quickly you see in terms of accounts payable overpayments or duplicate payments going out. So on one of our recovery audit clients, enrolled in the Apex services, when they were implementing the e-invoice solution. So we did an audit, and during the 4 months of deployment, there was a 300% increase in overpayments during that deployment period. And it is very important to know about such deployment stacks going into any new project, which changes your vendor master or changes how you pay the vendors or receive invoices from them. And what we highly recommend is a 90-day statement review so that all overpayments are getting caught as close to the payment date as possible. And this helps stops the money from becoming unrecoverable and also increases your available working capital. So always be aware of the deployment spike as you plan any new projects within your organization.
So, as I mentioned, our accuracy rate is very good, but still there mistakes happen. Anytime you have human intervention, that is a risk. So, looking at some of the more common things that we see in our data, we see, for instance, invoices that have where the invoice numbers have been keyed in wrong. Maybe the 0 was taken to be an O, or the 1 taken to be an I, or something like that. These are, we don't have OCR technology. It's something we're hoping to add in the very near future. But these are mistakes that happen because invoices look different, and the processors are cranking out a really high volume each day. So again, we have a very good track record, but always looking to improve upon that. And then next slide, please. Another big opportunity for us is in our vendor master, and it can create noise when multiple records are set up for the same vendor. It just creates more opportunity for the same invoice to be posted twice in the system. We do have systematic controls, and we have some manual controls as well to catch those things. But mistakes, happen, and some of these things slip through, even despite the controls. And so that's really been a huge area of focus for us recently in the last year, and that's why we, decided to use the smartvm solution, because given the data, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of vendors in our vendor master. Is too large. It was too enormous for us to try to tackle manually. We didn't have a means for wrangling the data, pulling it together, compiling it into a form that we could actually action. And so that's something that SmartVM has been extremely helpful to us. We've been able to basically upload our vendor master database into the tool, and then it has algorithms and logic that compare and use fuzzy logic to identify potential duplicates, and then we're able to so easily see them, flag them, review them, and determine if indeed they are duplicates. So we've been able to clear out hundreds so far of vendors from our vendor master that were duplicate and not needed. And we're just getting started. I mean, there will be many, many more. We're anticipating that there will be thousands of records that we'll be able to eliminate. And this is just going to help us so much in avoiding the duplicate payments, which is, ultimately the goal. That's what we're trying to reduce and address through this process.
Thank you for that, Julie. And as Julie mentioned, use of SmartVM. So what is SmartVM doing? It's data in and gold out. That's how we call it, right? So SmartVM is integrated with more than 650 plus global data sources, including government organizations, regulatory authorities, and so on and so forth. And it contains 32 million plus golden supplier records, and these are suppliers who are providing services to Fortune 500 and the Global 2000 of the world. And SmartVM was developed along with our supplier portal. Uh, primarily because we know the vendor master is highly inaccurate, or in a lot of cases has absent data or missing data elements. And this was resulting in fines related to prohibited vendors, for example, or B notices from IRS, or overpayments to duplicate vendors, like in the case of PepsiCo. And that's something that is more in the news now, which is uh, payment fraud due to bank account changes. This was the case pre-COVID, and this has only increased with the current work from home environments that we live in. So we now provide real-time bank account ownership validations for several countries. In the US, it's through Early Warning Network. But we also have bank account ownership validation for India, for United Kingdom, and Sweden. And globally, we are able to validate the entire bank master. In the next slide, it kind of gives you a high level overview of all of the data sources that are connected on a global level. So we connect to 90 plus prohibited watch lists. We connect to all of the Secretary of States in the US. We connect to more than 56 different countries' tax authorities, and the list goes on and on. How we utilize the data is, we will take your vendor master, for example, validate all of the information, provide the results, but most importantly, also append missing information like contacts and addresses, and so on and so forth. And we also happen to have the best in class contacts in terms of contact scores, because our contact database is related to the accounts receivable perspective from the supplier side. So the context of the contact is very important and useful. Another real life use case how companies are now using SmartVM is for their diversity initiatives. So diversity is a big thing for our customers, and many of our customers have either enrolled into some governmental programs where they need to be compliant, or they're just trying to manage the direct spend with suppliers who may be diverse and increase that spend. So this is where SmartVM can help, where we can match all of your existing suppliers and validate whether they are registered with SBA.gov or the National Minority Development Council, and provide those results back to you. So this increases or helps to increase your spend reporting on diverse suppliers. And then with the Smart VM and Apex portal combined, a lot of our clients even capture this information during the onboarding itself. So as you onboard new suppliers, you have this information right from the start. So that's one real life use case on how we are using Smart VM. But there's so many other use cases that we can take advantage of. So having said that, it looks like there are a few questions. So we can address those first. And then I would love to take some time and walk you through the demo of the application.
Yeah, I'm reading through the questions, and it makes me feel good, warms my heart, because it's obvious that we're all struggling with the same thing. So I'm happy to share from a PepsiCo perspective how we've addressed some of these things. But we all have the same problems that we're trying to solve. So there's a comfort in that in some way. I'll take the first one. How do you handle vendors across your company codes? One vendor extended to other company codes, or create a new vendor every time? We have a little bit of a unique situation right now in PepsiCo, in that our SAP instance was set up with one company code, all divisions sharing the same company code. It's not the best practice to set a system up that way. And so right now, though, we do not have company or entity specific vendors. Any entity can use any vendor in our system, basically. So we will have a different setup once we move to S4HANA. But right now, that's how we operate. And the question was, how does that work in SmartVM? Akhilesh, do you want to add to
Yeah,
that?
sure. So with SmartVM, what we do is we load all of your suppliers, and we do support suppliers getting tied to multiple company codes, right? So one vendor ID can be tied to any number of company codes. That's not a problem with our data structure. So we can definitely import it in that fashion. And the Apex portal tool also supports it, which is our supplier onboarding tool. So it just works out of the box in that manner. And just addressing one more question that I see in the chat, which is on the real-time capabilities, and Julie, you can add to this as well, which is not only SmartVM can validate duplicate vendors when we load all your existing data, but with a combination of some scheduling features within SmartVM, we can set a particular frequency on when to run the duplicate match all over again. So you can schedule it within SmartVM saying to run it either daily or weekly or annually or every 6 months and so on. So it's your choice on the frequency. On top of that, if you happen to use the Apex Portal solution, it's even real time within seconds, meaning the moment a new vendor record is trying to be registered or submitted for registration, it does the dupe check instantly and gives the results. So that's how we do it real time. But Julie, you can add to that as well.
Yeah, and we don't have that real-time capability set up yet. We are just using the tool on demand. We're triggering it and uploading our files as we are able. We really set it up and got running with it fairly close to our year end, and so then we had to pause and focus on year end, but we're back at it now, and so I think we'll be using it definitely on a periodic basis, hopefully more often than that. But because we're putting in large volumes of data at one time, there is some time involved then in reviewing the results and acting on them. So that's why probably we'll be doing using a maybe biweekly or periodic approach for this one-time cleanup. Then ongoing, I can see us using it on a weekly basis.
Thanks for
I
that.
see a question for me. How often do you get notified of potential duplicate vendors? Is every day? Okay, sorry, that was that question. And then one issue we continually have is removing duplicate vendors because there are purchase orders dispatched. Once they identify duplicates, do you immediately remove them? That is a touchy subject. We have gotten ourselves in trouble a little bit by trying to deactivate vendors a little bit too soon. So there is a process now that we use to check all of the activity for that vendor to make sure that there is no open purchase order, no open invoices that could potentially be, could cause problems if we deactivate the record. So it's not something that we do immediately. There are some steps that we have to follow before we can actually remove or deactivate those vendors. What are we considering a duplicate vendor? PepsiCo considers a duplicate to be having the same name, tax ID and address and reporting name. I see a question further on that was asking about, what was it? Well, it's kind of along those same lines. I apologize, I can't find that question now, but that's, it was about remit to addresses. Do we have a separate record for each remit to? And for PepsiCo, we do. We create an entirely separate record. So as long as those vendors have different addresses but share the same tax ID, we would not consider those to be duplicates.
Thanks for that, Julie. Yeah, and from a technology perspective, SmartVM is able to recognize that it's another remit address for the same vendor. So that's what we call an acceptable duplicate. So we can avoid the flagging over there. So it depends on how we load the data from the ERP and map it. But yes, if the ERP has that grouping in place or the linkage in place, then SmartVM will recognize that. Uh, I'm just browsing through a couple more questions. Julia, maybe this is for you, which is what is the percentage of cleanup or identified duplicates in your current database?
It's really hard to say for the reasons I stated. We had to pause in our efforts and focus on year end and a couple other time sensitive projects for the last couple months. So I really can't give a percentage just yet. I know that it's not outrageous, but it's probably a little bit more than we were expecting we would find. So.
Thanks for that, Julie. And there's another question on matching vendor numbers with customer numbers.
Yeah.
So from a technology standpoint, from a smartvm and apex portal, it's kind of one and the same thing. It's just another data point for us. So yes, we can allow that match between customers and suppliers. It's on based on what we load. And Julie, like, do you have any plans on matching it at PepsiCo?
I believe that the S4HANA system will allow us to do that. We don't right now, but I think that will be functionality that we will leverage with the new ERP.
Thanks for that. And there's one more question on tax ID using tax ID for duplicate match and not necessarily bank account info. So just wanted to add to that question is by default, the duplicate vendor match is based on tax ID and various combination of names and the fuzzy logic on the names of the vendors. Uh, but in addition to that, we also have a check called duplicate bank validation. So once the bank data is loaded in smartvm or in the apex portal environment, if two unique suppliers happen to have the exact same bank account number, routing number, etc., they'll also be flagged as a potential duplicate, but on the basis of duplicate bank, that's another data point in the result. And what happens over here is it may not be necessarily a true duplicate vendor, but maybe two vendors are using the same factoring agent for receiving payments, right? So that's where that's an acceptable duplicate on the bank account. But it's also going to provide you some insight on potential payment fraud scenarios where uh, if the account number was changed incorrectly, then more than one supplier will have the same account. So we do provide that insight. And I'll take one more question from Vikram, which is, do you connect Apex with three ERPs directly or via middleware? So uh, in terms of PepsiCo, right now, it's a file upload from different ERPs. So it's not integrated real time, but in future, they may be planned. So Julie, you could share the insight over there.
Yes, I mean, given that all of our divisions will soon, in the next 5 to 6 years, be operating on a single ERP instance, then it will make things will make life much simpler for us in many many ways. But one will be that it will enable us to much more easily connect to or place on top of other tools and technologies such as SmartVM, which is very cumbersome right now because of the interfaces that we'd have to create for each ERP. But absolutely, that's something that we will be able to pursue more easily going forward.
Excellent. So at this time, I'm going to switch the session to a short walkthrough of the smartvm application, and then I'll open it up to any additional questions. So I'm sharing my screen now and wanted to give you all a preview of what the smartvm application looks like. So once we log into the application, this is the smartvm dashboard that we all see based on the subscription. And the smartvm dashboard, as Julie mentioned, allows any customer like PepsiCo and others to upload data at several intervals, right, or regular intervals. And whenever we upload data, that one instance of data upload creates a new run, right? So every time you upload data, you get a separate run. And this way you can report or get statistics based on that one transaction or one batch of vendors that we uploaded. So this is a demo version of our application. So once we create a run, you can see the run name over here with validations completed as the status. And it shows the number of vendors uploaded, number of records uploaded, and so on and so forth. uh, doing a drill down on a particular run. So when we create a new run, uh, as a customer, you have full control on what expectation do you have uh, in terms of the results from that run. So SmartVM, like I mentioned earlier, has 650 plus data sources externally, and we have a lot of scorecards that we create internally. So you can take advantage of hundreds of validations and data append features. So this is a configuration screen which is pre-configured for you out of the box using the best-in-class recommendations, right? So you have an option here on changing it, but if you want to just go and follow the best practices, you can just leave it alone and proceed on to the next step. So just giving you a preview at a header level, we check for known entities, duplicates check, uh, politically exposed persons, prohibited list like OFAC and World Bank prohibited list, EPA violations, healthcare provider exclusions, and so on and so forth. Then we do the address validation globally. We do bank master validation globally, like SWIFT codes, IBANs, and account ownership validation for certain countries. We do email validation on a global level, phone number validation, we do tax validations for several countries, and they're all listed here. And all of this is pre-configured, right? And the list goes on. And the last two are the identity, which is the business classification. What is the SIC code or NAICS codes, which means what type of products and services the vendors are providing. And using industry standard classification, we can append this information. And lastly, I talked about diversity information earlier, which gets appended and validated. The next screen is just a preview of when you upload the data, you can use an API or a batch file to upload it. It just does a very quick check on the number of columns that you are uploading per type of data set so that we can ensure that the data file itself is good, right? And if there's an issue, you'll see a red circle here. Once you know that the data has been uploaded correctly, then we do a quality check on that data in terms of missing information, right? So when you upload your vendor master, you'll see, okay, how many vendors have business entity type missing? In this case, it's 88%. How many vendors have address information missing, like city, state, zip, and so on, right? So for each type of data structure, we highlight how does your data look like today, so that you have a appreciation of the post processing from SmartVM. And then the next screen shows the progress in real time as you use the application. So in this case, the run is completed and we are seeing all green checks. And lastly, you get to this dashboard from an application perspective where you see the results. So how many vendors got uploaded and what is the output from all the validations that we have done, right? So at a header level, for like in this case, there were 18% duplicate vendors found, right? SmartVM known entity is how many of your suppliers are doing business with other Fortune 1000 companies. So in effect, are they a known vendor or not, right? So being a known vendor reduces the possibility of fraud. Unknown vendors doesn't mean it's a fraud scenario, but the risk is higher. Prohibited list check. So in this case, 0.39% of the vendors were on some sort of a prohibited list like OFAC. We're showing results on address validation, pass and fail, and how many we appended versus the original addresses, right? So both validation and enrichment is occurring here. And then the dashboard goes on, like we did the bank validations, the validations at a contact level, right? So just not the vendor header level, but at a vendor contact level, is the contact of the vendor on a prohibited list or not? So we do those checks too. Same for phone numbers, identity, certifications, and tax, right? And even on a tax level, you can see in this case, several countries were loaded as part of that vendor master, and we did tax validations, and we are getting some pass and fail scenarios. So that's what SmartVM allows you to do. It lets you upload all your existing data, get to this result set. So now you know the quality of your existing data and how much we cleaned it and validated it. But as the next step, Now you have several options, right? So you can push the cleansed data to your ERP by hitting this button. We can create a data file that can be uploaded, or using APIs, we can integrate it real time. Or for some of the information that could not be cleansed, meaning you had a totally invalid address and smartvm could not find a match either. So in those cases, you can push it to a portal environment where the vendors could log in after getting a notification and help cleanse the data themselves, right? So in effect, the goal is to get 100% of your records cleansed, either through SmartVM or with a plugin to the portal solution. So that's what I wanted to talk about, and take you through a short series of steps that we do in SmartVM to enrich the data. So at this time, I'll open it up to additional questions. So there is one question here, which is, does SmartVM validate the tax ID and the name against the IRS? The answer is yes. And not only for the US, but we do it for 56 countries worldwide, right? So once the SSN number or the EIN number is entered, we first match it against IRS, and then also match it against the name. We also do a non-profit match if that is of interest to you. All right. So in in summary, what we are saying is, don't get duped, right? So recovery audit is critical to identify issues. We gave several examples, and Julie provided her insights on how they used it at PepsiCo. And the 99.9% is almost perfect. That's a very great number. But not good enough for PepsiCo, because when you talk about billions of dollars in spend, even a 0.03% makes a huge difference in terms of recovering millions of dollars, or preventing overpayments in terms of millions of dollars, right? And ultimately, we want to address the vendor master, make sure it's cleansed, and especially just by preventing duplicate vendors, you'll be able to prevent a lot of overpayments or statement credit errors from not getting resolved.
I see a question asking me in the chat room how long it took us to implement. And because, again, we don't have an interface with the SmartVM tool, it was very quick, almost immediate, that we were able to start using it. So, but I will have to let Akhilesh speak to how long a more formal implementation would take.
Yeah, sure. So the implementation can vary based on different factors, but on an average, if you're implementing against one ERP and one client region with global suppliers, the time is 4 to 6 months, right? Following best practices and taking the solution the way we have configured it with some of your workflows and fields configured. That's a typical average time. Now, based on your specific complexity or the number of ERPs that you have, the timeline can go up further. There's another question, is the app US based? Can it be used in Canada? The answer is yes. So although we are hosting the application in the United States, it's pre-configured with over 180,000 global business roles. And definitely it can be used in Canada and all countries in the world. So Julie, there's a question around internal SOX controls, and how did you get in compliance with passing the data to SmartVM? So would you be able to share that from a PepsiCo standpoint?
Yeah, we have a very intensive security review process that our IT team leads. And so we actually had already gone through a very intensive review of Apex because we're handing them our data files for the audit recovery. So this was really just an extension of that. But yeah, they do a full review to ensure that the data is encrypted and secure where it needs to be.
Thank you, Julie.
I see one more question. Would this be a good alternative to using Dun& Bradstreet to vet vendors? I guess it depends on what your vetting process is or what is important to you and your company as you consider vendors to work with. If you're looking at, say, credit risk, not sure, Akhilesh, if there's any aspect of the tool that would be helpful in that regard. But for us, we don't use D&B in our vetting process. We are more concerned with the tax ID validation, OFAC, banking validation. So that's not something that we use in our process.
Sure. And just to add to what you said, Julie, DNB provides certain types of risk information. From a quality of data perspective, we believe smartvm is a very good alternative to DNB or some of the other solutions out there, because you get all of the validations based on either tax ID or the bank account ownership, the address of the vendor, and so on. That may not be available in DNB or similar tools. But yes, we actually integrate with DNB for other reasons, which is if you have a process of getting the financial risk scores or other risk scores from DNB, we can complement our solution with that integration where you take advantage of all of the offerings from SmartVM. And then from a risk management perspective, we can get that data from DNB, LexisNexis, Experian, and the works, and present a comprehensive dashboard. And from our Apex portal solution environment, we have a full-blown supply risk management tool, which offers a lot of questionnaires and scorecards on managing risk of your suppliers. And then in addition to what we offer, we always integrate with third-party sources as well.
And just one note I should add, PepsiCo certainly does consider credit risk when considering vendors, but it's not something that the shared services accounts payable team, is that something that our global procurement group handles. I want to clarify that.
Thanks. Thank you for that. And yes, the Apex solution is hosted in the Apex cloud. So it's a private cloud, and our data center is in Swanee, Georgia. That's where we hosted. A public cloud option is available if you prefer that, but by default, it's on our private cloud. And one last question is around data cleansing and whether it can be done directly from the SmartVM dashboard. Yes, that's right. And you can use a standard web browser to do that cleanse, right? So as long as you're able to get a file and upload it through the browser, you can run the SmartVM app and get the results back. So no technology integration required to start with. Of course, if you prefer real-time integration, you can always add it later. All right. So how are we doing on time, Heather or Matthew?
You definitely still have a few minutes. If there's some thoughts, there were a few questions I'm sifting through to see if we didn't get them answered. So feel free to do a quick sum up, and I will be sending across any questions we didn't get to. We got a lot of questions, so it's been fantastic.
Excellent. And really thankful to the audience for listening in, taking some time and asking some great questions. We would love to get some feedback from you. So if you need more information, about the Apex solution, or you have follow-up questions from Julie at PepsiCo, feel free to reach out. I believe you can fill out this particular form for requesting more information. So whether you're interested in the Gartner report or the supply onboarding process, data cleansing, etc., within your Zoom meeting, there is a poll option, and please feel free to check on the right boxes, and then we can get that information to you.
And I will just say it's been a pleasure to be part of this today. I really appreciate everyone's participation and questions. And I did see a question in the list asking if I would mind sharing my email address, and I don't mind at all. It's julie.becker@pepsico.com. And so I think that will also be included in the following notes or meeting wrap-up notes that are shared out. So please reach out. And again, thank you very much for being here today.
Excellent. And thank you again from my side as well. And, as we close the session, there's one more question somebody asked, so I'll answer that and close out, which is, does Apex provide supplier relationship management and performance management capabilities? The answer is yes. And it's available as a module, so you can use in combination with registration and smartvm as well. Thanks for that question. So thank you all for joining, and it was a real pleasure. And if you're interested in such webinars, please keep a lookout for them, and we'll have a lot more sessions coming up.
Thank you, Akhilesh. Thank you so much, Julie. This was fantastic. You got something like 20 questions, and it's a testament to the importance of the topic and the interest in this topic that so many questions were out there. So thank you so much to anyone who might have joined a little bit late. This will be available on demand. We were recording the session, and you will be able to see it on demand. You'll get an email about that, so you'll be able to access it after the fact, and let your teams know, that you got to see this fantastic webinar with apexanalytix and with PepsiCo. Again, thank you so much to apexanalytix for hosting this webinar. We're always so thrilled to have them as a partner. If you are interested in a part 2, Akhilesh and Julie are going to be doing a presentation at Shared Services and Outsourcing Week Live, which is actually digital, which will be on March 8th to the 11th. Their session will be on March 9th at 1:05 Eastern time. So we'd be thrilled for you to go register for that event and be able to see them once again. But for now, we're going to sign off. Thanks to everybody for joining us today. Thank you so much for answering the poll. You get another 20 seconds to answer that poll. And again, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to email us or email Akhilesh and Julie, who have provided their information. You'll be able to see this on demand. And we thank you just so much today for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks.